For this section about alcohol, you're not going to read and take reading notes. You'll only take these class notes. So you don't need to do a reading notes, class notes chart. You can just write these down as your notes. Anything that's in black, you should write down, and things that are in blue, you do not need to write down. So why do we care about alcohol? It's because substances that will not dissolve in water, they might dissolve in another solvent. And a common one that they often do dissolve in is alcohol. So alcohol is really useful to dissolve things that water will not dissolve. But there are many different kinds of alcohol. Remember back when we did the density of a liquid lab, and you guys all thought that we were using methyl alcohol because of its density, and we were actually using isopropanol? Those are two different kinds of alcohol, and the reason their densities were similar is because they're in the same family, but they're not the same chemical. Two common kinds of alcohol are called wood alcohol and grain alcohol. They're named after where they came from. So wood alcohol was first made by heating wood. You wouldn't let it burn. You would just heat it, and then a lot of liquids would come off the wood. And this one is called methanol or methyl alcohol. This is a picture of its chemical formula. You can see the H's for hydrogens and the C for carbon and the O for oxygen. So it's a pretty simple chemical. Grain alcohol is made by fermenting grains or fruits like corn or barley or grapes, and it's called ethanol or ethyl alcohol. You can see it's a little more complicated. It's got an extra 2 H's and an extra C. So it has 1 more carbon and 2 hydrogens. This is the alcohol in beer, wine, and liquor, which, you know, those are made by fermenting a grain or a fruit, letting the yeast turn the sugar into alcohol. So what makes them different? They have different characteristic properties. You'll notice the density is the same, but they have different melting points and boiling points, and so they're useful for different things. But all alcohols are flammable, so we need to be very careful when we're using them. Remember that during the lab when we were boiling a liquid, one of the liquids we boiled was in the alcohol family, and so we had to be really careful not to let the vapors escape because we didn't want to have fireballs everywhere. Another thing, and this is more just for your own interest, ethyl alcohol, as you know, is poisonous in large quantities, but other alcohols are poisonous even in small quantities. So that's another difference between some of these. You know, we consume small amounts of ethanol, and, you know, small amounts are safe, but even the smallest amount of methanol would not be safe. The solvent that you guys are going to be using for the next lab is isopropanol. We also know that as rubbing alcohol. And you can see it's a little more complicated than the other alcohols, and it's not made in nature. It's created in the laboratory. But it is a really, really good solvent. So it dissolves many substances that are insoluble in water, and that's why we use it. So now you know about 3 different types of alcohol. The one we're going to use in the lab is isopropanol, and we'll be using it for several labs coming up.